Chloe Miller, 30, a photojournalist. I've tasted the brutal distortion of truth and watched it rip my life apart. Eleanor Vance, my editor-in-chief, didn't just manipulate the photos I took of a bus crash. She doctored them to incite hatred against a local community, tearing trust and relationships apart for profit. 7 years of my life, my career, my reputation, were trampled by a leaner and a shadowy political organization, all for dirty millions and power. When I found the original photos and the emails that mapped out their scheme, my blood boiled. I couldn't look away. They thought a small-time reporter like me would stay silent in the face of a force that could crush me. Fear felt like a knife at my throat, but rage swallowed everything else. I swore I wouldn't let a leaner win. They thought they'd buried me, they were wrong. I hold ironclad proof. The original images, the emails, every piece of their crime. This time I won't just write the story, I'll tear down their curtain of lies. I was 26 years old when I finally admitted to myself that my life had been consumed by a camera. I work as a freelance photojournalist in Chicago. Some people think that means I spend my days traveling the world or walking red carpets. The truth is far less glamorous. My life is spent chasing leads through crowded streets, scraping together rent money with photo sales, and surviving on diner coffee at midnight. But I would not trade it for anything, because every time I lift the camera to my eye, I feel that I am capturing something that matters. Chicago is not just a city to me. It is an endless character with 1,000 moods. The sound of sirens is like its heartbeat. The rumble of the elevated train is like a pulse under the skin. At sunrise, the light over Lake Michigan can make even the tallest towers blush pink. By night, the alleys can swallow you whole if you are not careful. I have walked these streets since I was a teenager, learning which corners feel like home and which corners whisper danger. My photos are pieces of that truth, fragments of a city that refuses to be simplified. Most mornings begin in a small cafe on the corner of a busy street called Maria's Corner. Maria Alvarez runs the place with the kind of authority that makes everyone listen. She is in her 40s, sharp-tongued but warm-hearted, and she treats her customers like unruly children she loves too much to abandon. She keeps the coffee strong, the music low, and the gossip flowing. Her cafe is my second home and my unofficial newsroom. "Chloe, you look like you wrestled with a train and lost," Maria said one morning as she slid a steaming mug across the counter. I grinned even though my eyes burned from another sleepless night of editing. "Morning to you too. You were up all night again." "I can see it in your face. When was the last time you slept?" I took a long sip of coffee. "Sleep is overrated. You keep saying that until you collapse on my floor. One day I am going to charge you rent for using this place as your office. You would miss me if I left." Maria shook her head, but her smile betrayed her. She liked having me around. She liked pretending she was annoyed, but she always had a fresh mug waiting. Another anchor in my life was Jack Sullivan, my oldest friend. Jack and I grew up on the same block and somehow managed to stay connected even as our lives spun in different directions. He became a traffic cop, steady and cautious, while I ran headfirst into danger with my camera. Jack had a way of grounding me even when he was scolding me. He often met me at Maria's after his shift. One evening he walked in still in uniform, looking tired but unshaken as always. He sat down across from me with a sigh. "You chasing another story?" he asked. "Not yet, something will show up, it always does. You talk about it like trouble is a friend you are expecting for dinner. Trouble photographs well." Jack gave me a look that was equal parts worry and affection. He knew me too well. He knew he could never talk me into a safer path, but he never stopped trying. Maria joined in from behind the counter. "She is stubborn, Jack, always has been. That is why she might actually change something in this city." I raised my mug in a mock toast. "To stubbornness?" They rolled their eyes in unison, but I could feel the love in it. These two people kept me tethered to reality when the world tried to spin me off course. Being a freelancer meant instability. Some weeks I sold a batch of photos to a small independent outlet. Other weeks I barely scraped together enough money to keep the lights on. But money was never the reason I did this. What kept me going was the belief that images can pierce through lies. That maybe one picture could make someone stop and face a truth they had been avoiding. I think part of that came from my father. When I was little, I watched him read the newspaper every morning at the kitchen table. He trusted every word. He believed the people who wrote those stories carried the weight of integrity. But when I entered the profession, I saw how easily stories could be bent. Headlines cropped, context twisted, photos altered until the truth was unrecognizable. That realization lit a fire in me. I wanted to be the kind of journalist who resisted that distortion, who used her camera to hold on to what was real. There were days when the city itself seemed to test me. One morning, a heavy fog rolled in from the lake and swallowed the skyline. The skyscrapers disappeared into gray like they were ashamed to be seen. I walked for hours, photographing strangers who looked like ghosts moving through the mist. Later, I sat in Maria's cafe editing the shots. Jack leaned over my shoulder and shook his head. You ever think about shooting weddings or something normal? Nope. Why not? People pay for that. You would not be broke all the time. Because the world does not need another picture of a cake. It needs proof of what is broken, so maybe someone will fix it. Jack sighed and leaned back. And you wonder why I worry? Maria chimed in. Let her be, Jack. She is chasing something bigger than money. That kind of stubbornness can move mountains. I smiled and raised my cup again. See, Maria gets it. Those were the moments that defined my routine. Coffee, sarcasm, worry, and hope all mixed together in a tiny cafe while the city outside kept spinning. I felt like I was preparing for something even though I did not know what. I walked the streets with my camera constantly. I learned to read faces like open books. The weary mother pulling 2 kids down the sidewalk with grocery bags that looked too heavy. The businessman glued to his phone, ignoring the world around him. The teenager sketching graffiti on a wall that would be painted over tomorrow. I tried to capture them all. My hard drives were full of thousands of lives frozen in time, little pieces of truth. Sometimes people asked me why I risked so much for photos that might never make me rich. I never had an answer that made sense to them. But I knew. I knew that if I did not fight to document reality, then who would? I remember one evening standing on the bridge over the Chicago River, the sun setting behind me. The water glowed orange and gold and the buildings mirrored fire. I thought about how fleeting it all was, how easily beauty and tragedy slipped away if no one stopped to look. I raised my camera and took a shot. That was my way of saying this moment existed and it mattered. Maria teased me later when I showed her the photo. Pretty pictures do not pay the bills, Chloe. I know, but they feed my soul. She rolled her eyes again, but there was pride in her smile. Jack was less sentimental. You are going to get yourself killed chasing beauty in the wrong neighborhood. I will be fine. I have you to bail me out if I need it. He groaned, but I could tell he would. He always would. That was the rhythm of my life at 26. Days filled with coffee and wandering. Nights filled with editing and doubt. Friends who worried and friends who supported me. A city that never stopped breathing down my neck. I thought I understood the risks. I thought I was ready for anything. I had no idea what was coming. Within a week, a bus would crash on a crowded street, and my camera would capture the most important photos of my career. Within a week, I would cross paths with Alina Vance, the most powerful editor in the city, and discover how fragile the truth could become when money and power were involved. But that night on the bridge with the river glowing like fire, I still believed my camera was enough to protect the truth. I was wrong. I remember the day of the accident like it was etched into my skin. It was a Tuesday afternoon, one of those sticky Chicago days when the humidity clung to everything. The streets were crowded with kids just out of school and office workers rushing for the train. I had no assignment that day, so I was walking aimlessly with my camera slung around my neck, hoping to stumble into a story. That is how it always happened. The best stories never came when I chased them. They came when I was paying attention. I heard the screech first, a sound that cut through every other noise like a knife through fabric. Then came the crash, a sickening roar of metal twisting against concrete. I turned instinctively, my camera already in my hands before I fully registered what I was seeing. A city bus had slammed into a traffic light pole and tipped onto its side. Windows shattered, people screamed, smoke rose from the hood. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady. I moved closer, clicking rapidly, every shot a piece of evidence. Children were climbing out through broken glass. A man pulled an elderly woman out by her arms. Another woman, bleeding from her forehead, staggered away holding a child. The chaos unfolded like a nightmare in slow motion, and I could not look away. "Call for help," someone shouted. I lowered the camera just long enough to pull out my phone and dial 911. My voice was calm, almost detached, as I gave the dispatcher the location and described the scene. Years of training myself to keep focus in crisis had kicked in. Then I raised the camera again. Jack appeared minutes later, his patrol car screeching to a halt. He jumped out, eyes wide. "Chloe, get back," he shouted. "It's not safe." "I have to shoot this, Jack." "Stay behind the tape," he ordered, already moving toward the wreck. But there was no tape yet. The scene was raw and exposed, and I was in the middle of it. I caught images of paramedics rushing in, firefighters cutting through twisted metal, passengers clutching each other as they crawled out. Then I noticed something. The driver was slumped over, unconscious, but there was no sign of alcohol, no sign of drugs. The bus had clearly swerved to avoid a smaller car that had run a red light and fled the scene. My camera caught it all. The skid marks, the direction of impact, the terrified faces of passengers who had done nothing wrong. I knew what my photos showed. They showed an accident caused by recklessness, not by some community scapegoat. They showed ordinary people caught in tragedy. When the chaos settled and the victims were transported, I sat on the curb shaking. My camera felt heavier than ever. Maria arrived breathless, having heard about the crash on the news. She knelt beside me. "Chloe, are you all right?" "I got everything," I whispered. She touched my arm gently. "You always do." That night I uploaded the images, editing only for clarity, never altering the truth. I sent them to several outlets, unsure who would respond first. One name replied almost instantly. Eleanor Vance. She was the editor-in-chief of the Herald Tribune, the biggest paper in Chicago. Her reputation was legendary, ruthless, brilliant, unstoppable. I had never spoken to her directly before. My heart raced as I read her message. "Impressive work. I want to run these photos front page. Come to the Tribune office tomorrow morning. Eleanor." I barely slept. The next morning I walked into the Tribune headquarters, an imposing building of glass and steel that seemed to glare down at me. The newsroom buzzed with energy, phones ringing, keyboards clattering, televisions blaring updates. Then I saw her, Eleanor Vance. She was tall, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, her hair cut sharp, her eyes sharper. She greeted me with a handshake that felt like a test. "Chloe Miller," she said smoothly. "The girl with the camera who caught lightning in a bottle." "I just did my job," I replied cautiously. "You did more than that. You captured the pulse of a city in crisis. That is rare, you have talent." Her office was sleek, lined with awards and framed front pages. She studied the photos on her screen while I sat across from her, my stomach tight with nerves. "These are strong," she said finally. "Very strong, but we will need to frame the story carefully." "What do you mean?" She turned those cold eyes on me. "People want clarity. They want a villain. We will emphasize the presence of certain individuals near the crash. It will drive engagement. It will make the story stick." I frowned. "But that is not what happened. The cause was a car running a red light. I photographed the skid marks. I have the sequence." Eleanor smiled without warmth. "I am not saying we fabricate, just highlight certain aspects. Guide the narrative, that is how you create impact." My chest tightened. "That is not truth, that is manipulation." Her expression hardened. "You are young, Chloe. You have passion. I respect that. But if you want to survive in this business, you need to learn that perception shapes reality more than facts do. Let me handle this. Trust me." I left her office uneasy, but part of me was flattered. The most powerful editor in the city wanted my work. She had called me talented. She had offered me a chance to be seen. I tried to convince myself it would be fine, that she would not twist the story beyond recognition. The next morning I opened the paper and my stomach dropped. The headline screamed about reckless behavior by a minority group. The photos were mine but altered, cropped, manipulated. My clear shots of skid marks and fleeing car were gone. Instead, the images framed certain bystanders in a way that suggested guilt. The narrative was false, but it was presented as truth. I slammed the paper down on Maria's counter. "She changed everything." Maria read the headline and her face darkened. "This is not what you showed me. It is not what happened." Jack walked in moments later, uniform crisp, expression grim. He tossed the paper down beside mine. "Do you realize what they just did? This is going to stir up hell in neighborhoods that already feel targeted." "I tried to stop it," I whispered. "Then stop it louder," Jack shot back. "Because if this spreads, people are going to get hurt." Maria touched my hand. "You have proof, Chloe. You have the originals. Do not let her bury the truth." I felt a storm rising inside me. For the first time, I understood that my photos were not just images. They were weapons, and in the wrong hands, they could destroy lives. Eleanor had taken my truth and twisted it into a blade aimed at innocent people. I knew I had to confront her. That afternoon, I marched back into the Tribune office, clutching my hard drive like it was a shield. Eleanor looked up as I entered, calm and unbothered. "You are upset," she said lightly. "You lied," I snapped. "You turned my work into propaganda. People will suffer because of this." She leaned back in her chair, eyes glittering. "Careful, Chloe. Words like that can end a career." "You do not scare me." Her smile chilled me. "You should be scared. Do you think anyone will believe you over me? I have built this paper for 20 years. You are just a freelancer with a camera. If you push me, I will make sure you never work in the city again. I froze, the weight of her threat pressing down on me. She meant it. I could see it in her eyes. She had destroyed people before and she would do it again. I walked out shaking, my head spinning. The city outside seemed louder, harsher. I clutched my hard drive against my chest and wondered if truth had any chance against someone like Eleanor Vance. That night I sat in Maria's cafe, staring at my untouched coffee. Maria hovered nearby, watching me with concern. "What are you going to do?" she asked softly. "I do not know," I admitted. "If I fight her, she will ruin me, but if I stay quiet, I let her story stand." Jack slid into the booth beside me. "You already know what you have to do, you just do not want to admit it." I closed my eyes. They were right, but I was terrified, because for the first time in my life, I realized the truth might not be enough. I could not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the paper's headline flashing like a neon wound. My photos had become something I did not recognize, and the city was reacting. I watched the evening news and saw protesters clashing in the streets, shouting at each other with fists raised. They were fueled by a lie born out of my work. I wanted to throw up. Maria tried to talk me down when I showed up at the cafe the next morning. She slid a plate of eggs across the counter that I barely touched. "You look like you crawled out of a grave," she said. "I feel worse," I muttered. "You cannot carry the whole city on your shoulders, Chloe." "But I put this on their shoulders," I argued. "Those photos were mine. My name was in the credits. People think I told that story. They think I accused innocent people. What if someone gets hurt because of this?" Maria leaned on the counter, lowering her voice. "Then you fight, you have the originals, you prove what really happened." "It is not that simple," I whispered. "Eleanor warned me. She will destroy me if I try." "Maybe she is bluffing." I shook my head. "She is not bluffing. She looked me in the eye and promised it." Maria crossed her arms. "So what, you just give up, you hide? That is not you." I buried my face in my hands. I do not know what to do. That same afternoon, I started receiving anonymous texts, short messages that made my blood run cold. "Leave it alone. Stop digging, you will regret it." I deleted them, but they rattled me. When I walked home, I felt eyes on me. Every sound made me jump. For the first time, my city felt hostile, like the walls themselves were closing in. Jack stopped by that night, still in uniform. He dropped onto my couch with a sigh. "You have got people angry," he said. "I did not write that story," I snapped. "They do not care. They see your name, they see your pictures. Now half the South Side thinks you are a traitor and the other half thinks you are a hero for blaming the wrong people. Both sides are dangerous." I hugged my knees to my chest. "What do I do, Jack? Tell me what to do." He looked at me for a long time. "You already know. You cannot let Eleanor keep control of the story. You have to take it back." I shook my head. "She will kill my career." "Better your career than your conscience," he said quietly. His words stayed with me long after he left. I thought about my father reading the paper every morning, trusting those words. If he were alive, he would never forgive me for letting a lie spread in my name. The pressure built with each passing day. Protesters filled the streets. Talk shows debated endlessly. Politicians pointed fingers. And always the narrative followed Eleanor's version, not mine. I felt myself disappearing under it. Then I heard the name. It was Sarah, a reporter at the Tribune who had befriended me in the newsroom. She pulled me aside in the hallway one afternoon and spoke in a hurried whisper. "Chloe, I should not tell you this, but you are not the first. Eleanor has done this before. She ruined a man named David Harper. He used to be one of the best investigative reporters here. He caught her altering stories, and when he tried to speak up, she destroyed him, blacklisted him. He disappeared." My breath caught. "Where is he now?" "No one knows. Some say he left the city. Some say he is hiding. But if anyone understands what you are going through, it is him." I gripped her arm. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I do not want to see her eat you alive too." Sarah's eyes darted around nervously. "Be careful. She has eyes everywhere." That night I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the glow of my laptop. I searched every database I could access, every corner of the internet. David Harper, once a respected name, now barely a whisper. His bylines stopped abruptly 5 years ago. His social media went silent. It was like he had been erased. Maria called me around midnight. "Still awake?" she asked. "Of course. You found something, didn't you?" "His name is David Harper. He tried to expose Eleanor and she buried him." Maria was quiet for a moment. "So find him? I do not even know if he is alive." "Then find out. You cannot fight this alone, Chloe. If he has proof, if he has been through this, you need him." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. The thought of tracking down a man who had been forced into hiding felt impossible, but what choice did I have? The next few days I lived like a ghost. I carried my camera but barely used it. My mind was consumed with David Harper. I asked quiet questions around the city, but people either did not know or refused to talk. It was like his name carried a curse. Then one evening Jack stopped by again. He tossed a file onto my table. "I should not be giving you this," he said, "but you're going to keep digging whether I help or not, so here." I opened the file. Inside were records from 5 years ago, a police report filed by David Harper claiming harassment and threats. No follow-up. No resolution. "He was scared," I whispered. Jack nodded. "Scared enough to vanish, but look at the address listed back then. Maybe it is a start." I looked at him with gratitude. "Why are you helping me if you think I am just running toward danger?" He sighed. "Because you are my friend, and because I know you would never forgive yourself if you stop now." I hugged the file to my chest. David Harper was real. He had lived here once. Maybe he still did. Maybe I could find him, but Alina was watching. I knew it. Everywhere I went I felt the weight of her shadow. The anonymous texts continued. One night I found a note slipped under my door. "Drop it or lose everything." I sat on the floor holding that note, shaking with anger and fear. Maria arrived minutes later with takeout in her hands. She saw my face and set the food down. "What happened?" I showed her the note. Her jaw tightened. "Then you know you are on the right track. Bullies only threaten when they are scared." I swallowed hard. "But what if she is not bluffing? What if she really can end me?" Maria sat beside me. "Then at least you go down fighting for something that matters. That is more than most people can say." Her words steadied me. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of courage. Maybe I could find David Harper. Maybe I could prove that Alina was not invincible. As I lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, I whispered to myself, "You are not alone, Chloe. You just have to find the others she has hurt. Find them and the truth will follow." The city outside my window hummed with restless energy. Sirens wailed in the distance. I clutched my camera on the nightstand like a lifeline. Tomorrow I would begin the search in earnest. Tomorrow I would chase a ghost named David Harper. And maybe, just maybe, I would find the courage to bring Alina Vance down. I woke up the next morning with Jack's file still lying open on the table and the note from Alina's people burned into my memory. The threats had stopped scaring me. Now they just made me angry. If she wanted me to quit, then I must be close to something that mattered. I packed my camera, my notebook, and the file, then stepped out into the sharp chill of Chicago air. The address Jack had given me was old, 5 years out of date, but it was the only lead I had. A brownstone on the far edge of Logan Square. I caught the blue line north, rehearsing in my head what I would even say if David Harper somehow answered the door. When I reached the building, it looked abandoned. Paint peeled from the bricks, the windows were shuttered. A couple of kids sat on the stoop across the street, blasting music from a speaker. "Anybody live here?" I asked them. They shrugged. One of them said, "Old guy used to, don't see him much, think he moved out years ago." Not much help, but at least it meant I was on the right trail. I started canvassing nearby shops. At a corner bodega, an older woman behind the counter nodded when I asked about David Harper. "He bought groceries here sometimes. Real quiet, real polite. Then one day he just stopped coming. That was maybe 3-4 years ago. People said he left town." I pressed her. "Did he have friends here, any family?" She shook her head. "If he did, he never brought them around. Looked like a man carrying too many secrets." I walked out with a sinking feeling. Every clue just reminded me how thoroughly Alina had erased him. But then the woman hurried after me, lowering her voice. "Try the church on Damon," she said. "Pastor there used to check on him. Maybe he knows more." That evening, I found myself outside a weathered brick church with stained glass windows glowing in the fading light. Inside, a small choir practiced, their voices echoing off the rafters. I waited until they finished, then approached the man who looked like the pastor. "Reverend Morris?" I asked. He smiled kindly. "Yes, how can I help you?" "I'm looking for someone, David Harper. I was told you might know him." The warmth drained from his expression. He studied me for a long time. "Why are you looking for David?" "Because I'm living his story," I admitted. "I'm Chloe Miller. I'm a photojournalist. Alina Vance is trying to bury me the same way she buried him." The pastor's shoulders slumped, as if I'd confirmed a painful suspicion. "I haven't seen David in years. He came to me when he was at his lowest. Said Alina ruined him, said he couldn't trust anyone. Then one day he was just gone, no goodbye. I think he wanted to protect me by staying away." "Do you know where he went?" Morris hesitated. Then he said, "He mentioned an uncle's cabin in Wisconsin, way up near the Chequamegon Forest. Remote. He said if things got too bad, that's where he'd go." I thanked him and slipped out before the choir began another hymn. My heart was pounding. Wisconsin. It wasn't much, but it was the first real lead. I told Maria everything as soon as I got back. "You're not seriously thinking of driving up there," she said. "I have to. He might be the only one who can prove Aliner's pattern. And if he slams the door in your face, then at least I tried. But if he talks, he could save you, she finished. I nodded. Or we could save each other. 2 days later, with my beat-up car loaded with camera gear, notebooks, and a thermos of Maria's coffee, I drove north out of Chicago. The city lights faded behind me, replaced by endless stretches of highway and fields dusted with snow. By the time I reached the forest, the sun had dipped low. Pines loomed tall and heavy around the road. I nearly missed the turnoff, a narrow dirt path half buried under branches. At the end stood a weathered cabin. Smoke curled faintly from the chimney. My stomach flipped. Someone was home. I knocked, my breath clouding in the cold. Silence. I knocked again, louder. Finally, the door cracked open. A man with graying hair and tired eyes peered out, holding a shotgun low but ready. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. "David Harper? Depends who's asking." "My name is Chloe Miller. I'm a journalist. I need your help." The door began to close, but I shoved my foot against it. "Please, Aliner Vance is doing to me what she did to you. I need to know the truth." For a long moment he studied me, suspicion etched deep in every line of his face. Finally he sighed and lowered the shotgun. "Come inside before you freeze to death." The cabin was sparse but lived in. Books stacked in corners, a typewriter gathering dust on a desk. He poured coffee into 2 chipped mugs and handed me one. "You've got guts showing up here," he said, "or you're just stupid." "Probably both," I admitted. He almost smiled. "So Aliner's still at it?" I nodded. "She used my photos to frame a whole community. She threatened me when I tried to push back. People are already getting hurt. I can't stop her alone." He leaned back in his chair, eyes distant. "I tried once. I gathered evidence. Emails, recordings, witnesses. I thought the truth would protect me. Instead, she shredded me, said I fabricated everything, called me unstable. The paper printed a retraction, not of her lies, but of my career. No one would hire me after that." "You still have the evidence?" I asked, my voice trembling with hope. He hesitated. Then he stood, crossed to a cabinet, and pulled out a battered metal box. Inside were folders stuffed with papers, flash drives, and old cassette tapes. "It's all here," he said. "Every dirty trick, every payoff, every time she twisted the truth. But if you think having it is enough, you're wrong. She has friends in high places, powerful ones." "Then we go public outside her reach," I insisted. "Independent press. Platforms she can't control." David shook his head. "Easier said than done, and if you fail, she'll ruin you too." "She's already trying," I said. "If I walk away now, she wins, but if I fight with you, maybe we both get our lives back." For the first time, his eyes softened. "You remind me of myself before I lost everything." "I'm not giving up," I told him firmly. "And I don't think you want to either. That's why you kept all this. You were waiting for someone to come knock on your door." He chuckled bitterly. "Or maybe I just couldn't bring myself to burn it." We sat in silence, the crackle of the fireplace filling the room. Finally, he pushed the box toward me. "If you're serious, then you'd better understand the risk. Aliner isn't working alone. She's on the payroll of a political machine. They use her to steer the public, to fan flames when it suits them. That bus crash you photographed, it was perfect fuel for them." My stomach twisted. "So she's not just corrupt. She's part of something bigger." David nodded grimly. "And that's why people like us disappear when we get too close." I touched the box, feeling the weight of years of silence inside it. "Then let's make sure the truth doesn't disappear this time." He studied me for a long time. Then slowly, he extended his hand. "All right, Chloe, if you're in, I'm in." I shook his hand firmly, a surge of determination rushing through me. For the first time since the nightmare began, I felt like I wasn't alone. The fight was just beginning. The cabin creaked around us as the night pressed down heavy outside. I sat across from David, the battered metal box between us like some cursed artifact. My fingers hovered over it, but I hesitated, afraid of what exactly I was about to unleash. "Go on," he said. "Open it, you need to see." Inside were stacks of manila folders, each labeled in neat block letters: bribery, redactions, altered transcripts. Beneath them were USB drives wrapped in masking tape with dates scrawled in Sharpie. I picked one up and felt a strange shiver crawl through me. This wasn't paranoia. This was proof. David lit another log in the fireplace and sat back down. I started collecting that stuff the day I noticed Aliner's edits weren't just grammatical. She was changing meaning, direction, purpose. Then I realized she wasn't acting alone. I looked up sharply. "Who else?" He leaned forward. "A group that calls itself the Meridian Council. Not exactly a household name. They operate behind legitimate political action committees, nonprofits, lobby firms, but the money, it all flows from them. Aliner is one of their tools. She shapes stories so the council can shape public opinion." The name settled on my chest like lead. And the bus crash, classic diversion, he said. There's legislation moving through City Hall right now about redevelopment in South Chicago. Displacing communities, handing land over to corporations. What better way to make sure the public doesn't notice than by stoking racial tension after a tragedy? Everyone's too busy shouting at each other to follow the money. I rubbed my temples. So it's not just lies, it's manipulation with an agenda. Exactly, and she's good at it, too good. We sat in silence for a moment. The only sound was the crackle of burning wood. Then I asked the question that had been gnawing at me. Why didn't you publish this when you had the chance? His jaw tightened. I tried. I brought it to my editor, to colleagues I trusted. Within a week, my sources backed out, my bank account froze, and anonymous complaints about my erratic behavior appeared in HR files. They painted me as unstable. By the time I realized how deep it went, I had no allies left. And you gave up? I asked, maybe harsher than I intended. His eyes flickered with pain. I was alone, Chloe, completely alone. No Maria to cheer me on, no Jack to slip me files, just me against a machine that already decided my fate. You'll understand that isolation soon enough. I looked him dead in the eye. I already do, but I'm not giving up, and I don't think you should either. He chuckled bitterly. You're stubborn. Or determined, I shot back. You saved all of this for a reason. You never stopped believing it mattered. He didn't answer, but the way his gaze softened told me I was right. We spent hours combing through the files. Transcripts of interviews Alina had twisted. Proof of payments routed through shell companies. Drafts of stories altered with her notes in the margins. My chest tightened as I realized how many lies I'd unknowingly consumed over the years. At some point I whispered, "How many lives has she ruined?" David's voice was low. Countless, and not just reputations. Policies passed, communities fractured, families torn apart. That's the cost of controlled narratives. I thought of the protests back in Chicago, people screaming at each other in the streets. All of it fueled by her lie about my photos. I clenched my fists. Then we can't sit on this, we have to move fast. David shook his head. If you rush it, you'll walk right into her trap. You need strategy. Independent outlets won't touch this without verification. We need airtight evidence. Multiple channels ready to publish at once so she can't suppress it, and you'll need protection. Once she knows you're coming for her, she'll strike. I'm not afraid of her anymore, I said. You should be, he replied. Fear keeps you sharp, just don't let it keep you silent. We drafted a plan over cold pizza and stale coffee. Step 1, digitize everything, make backups. Step 2, identify trustworthy journalists outside the mainstream, people Alina couldn't influence. Step 3, build a timeline linking the Meridian Council to Alina's edits. Around 3 a.m., exhausted, I leaned back and asked, why trust me? Why let me walk out of here with your life's work when you've been hiding it for years? David studied me in the firelight. Because you showed up. Because you're still standing after everything she threw at you. And maybe because I'm tired of being a ghost. I smiled faintly. Then let's bring you back to life. The next morning, as snow dusted the trees outside, I packed the first batch of files into my bag. Before I left, David placed a small tape recorder in my hand. Listen to this when you're alone, he said. It's a conversation I recorded between Alina and one of her political handlers. Proof she's taking orders. Proof she's being paid. It nearly cost me everything. Then I'll make sure it costs her instead, I said. We clasped hands again, firmer this time. Driving back to Chicago, my mind raced. I replayed Maria's voice telling me not to give up, Jack's warning about danger, Sarah's whisper about David's ruin. Now I had evidence, an ally, and a plan. But Alina had eyes everywhere. And if she caught even a whiff of what I carried in my bag, my life could unravel faster than David's had. Still, for the first time, hope burned brighter than fear. When I reached the city, Maria was waiting in my apartment with takeout. I dropped the bag on the table and grinned. I found him, and he's in. Her eyes widened. Holy hell, Chloe, you actually found David Harper? Not just found him, I said. He gave me everything. Maria reached for the recorder. And this? Alina caught in the act, I said. Maria let out a low whistle. Girl, you're holding dynamite. Light it carefully. I collapsed onto the couch, suddenly bone-tired. Yeah, carefully, but soon. As I drifted into uneasy sleep that night, I knew the war had officially begun. And this time, Alina Vance wouldn't be the only one writing the story. The city felt different when I came back from the cabin. Colder, sharper, like every shadow held a pair of watching eyes. I carried David's box up 3 flights of stairs, pausing at every creak of the old building. By the time I shoved the door shut behind me, I was drenched in sweat even though the winter air outside had frozen my hands stiff. Maria helped me haul the box onto my kitchen table. God, this thing weighs a ton. What's in here, bricks? Close, I said, prying open the lid. Bricks of truth. She peered at the folders and drives like they were radioactive. This looks like evidence for a trial. It is, I said flatly. Eliner's trial, maybe the whole Meridian Council, too. We worked for hours, scanning documents, labeling files, uploading backups to encrypted drives. Maria handled the technical side while I sifted through the paper trail. The more I read, the sicker I felt. Emails where Eliner instructed staff to reshape a quote, wire transfers from shell companies to her personal account, memos from lobbyists congratulating her for shifting the narrative. Every page was another nail in the coffin of my faith in journalism. Around midnight, Maria sat back with a groan. If even half of this is real, you've got a bomb. But Chloe, bombs blow up whoever's holding them too. I know, I said. That's why we need allies. People we can trust to release this when the time comes. I reached out to Jack first. He came over the next morning, still in his CPD uniform, looking more exhausted than usual. He listened while I laid everything out. You're telling me the editor-in-chief of one of the biggest papers in Chicago is on a political payroll, he said slowly. Yes, I said, and now I can prove it. Jack rubbed his face. Chloe, do you realize what happens if you're wrong? If you publish this and it doesn't stick? I'm not wrong, I cut in. I've seen the documents, I've heard the tape. Eliner, been bought and paid for. He studied me a long moment, then he sighed. All right, I'm in. I can't help much with the publishing side, but I can keep an eye on who's watching you. And Chloe, they are watching you. I've seen your name flagged on internal memos. You're being tracked. My stomach tightened. Tracked how? Phones, cameras, maybe your laptop. Act like every device is compromised. Maria swore under her breath. Great, Big Brother's officially tuned in. That night the first strike landed. I woke to a pounding on my door at 2 a.m. Jack was outside with 2 other officers. Chloe, you're wanted for questioning, one of them said. What? Why? Suspicion of trespassing and theft at the Tribune offices, the officer replied coldly. I gaped. That's insane. I haven't been near the offices since, Jack cut in. I'll handle this. Go get your lawyer. Don't say a word until then. I spent 6 hours in a gray interrogation room while officers asked loaded questions. Did I have access to Tribune archives? Did I ever remove property? Did I know David Harper? My silence only made them angrier. Finally, Jack appeared and got me released. As we walked out, he muttered, That was Eliner. She planted this, trying to rattle you. Well, it worked, I admitted, my voice shaking. Back at my apartment, Maria shoved a mug of coffee into my hands. They're trying to wear you down. Don't let them. David called that night from the cabin. His voice was gravelly through the line. She knows you have the files. She'll hit harder now. You need to spread the material before she can bury it. How? I asked. There's a journalist in Milwaukee I trust. Independent. Name's Ruth Delgado. She's fearless and she owes me. Reach out to her. I looked at Maria. She was already scribbling the name on a notepad. We set up a meeting with Ruth in a small diner outside the city limits. She arrived in a heavy coat, eyes sharp behind thick glasses. David says you've got something, she said after we slid into a booth. I pushed a folder across the table. She flipped through it slowly, whistling low under her breath. Holy hell, this is dynamite. Will you help us publish it? I asked. Ruth glanced around before answering. Yes, but you need more than just me. This has to hit from multiple directions at once. We need to assemble a coalition of independent voices. Podcasters, digital papers, local radio. Once it's out everywhere, Eliner can't contain it. It sounded good in theory. But back in the city, Eliner was already moving faster than we could. My landlord slipped an eviction notice under my door. Maria's cafe received an anonymous health inspection that shut her down for 2 weeks. Jack got pulled into internal affairs for misconduct and suspended without pay. They were picking us off one by one. I wanted to scream, to throw the whole box of evidence into the river just to make it stop. But Maria grabbed my shoulders and shook me. You cannot quit now, she said fiercely. That's what she wants, that's what she counts on, that you'll get scared enough to fold. Don't fold, Chloe. I stared into her eyes and saw my own fear reflected back, but beneath it was something else. Fire. I won't, I whispered. That night, David called again. I've been thinking, you and I, we can't just play defense. We need to go on the offensive, leak a teaser, just enough to rattle her, make her scramble, then we drop the hammer. What kind of teaser? I asked. The tape, he said simply. Release the tape of her and her handler. It'll confirm your story and force her to respond, and when she denies it, we bury her with the rest. I hesitated. If we release the tape too early, won't she know we have the whole box? She already knows, David said. Now it's about who controls the timing. Maria, listening on speaker, nodded. Do it, scare her for once. I looked at the recorder on my table, my heart pounding. Elinor's voice lived inside that tiny machine, smug and confident. I could already imagine the city hearing it, recognizing the lies. All right, I said. Let's light the fuse. I had never hit send with hands that shaky before. Maria was sitting beside me on the couch, her leg bouncing like a drumbeat while the file uploaded. A 15-minute clip of Elinor in her office, talking to her handler about steering the narrative and making sure our donors are satisfied. No background noise, no ambiguity, no way to mistake whose voice it was. The file went to Ruth first, then to 3 independent podcasters, then to a blogger in New York with 500,000 subscribers. By the time the sun came up, the recording was out in the wild. And by lunchtime, Chicago was burning with it. Local radio hosts replayed the audio between songs. A morning news anchor raised her eyebrows and asked on air, "Does this sound like our Elinor Price?" Twitter trended with Elinor exposed. Half the city seemed outraged, the other half claimed it was fake. Maria and I sat at the cafe down the block, sipping burnt coffee, glued to our phones. People at other tables whispered about the tape, trading hot takes like baseball cards. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Nice trick. But you don't know what game you're playing. I shoved the screen toward Maria, her face paled. She knows it was you. Of course she knew. By evening, Elinor was on TV, smooth as silk, smiling into the camera. This so-called leak is a manufactured smear campaign. Anyone with editing software could fake a recording. I have served this city with integrity for 15 years, and I will not be distracted by lies. Her performance was flawless. Calm, dismissive, even charming. Watching her, you'd almost believe her. But then came the kicker. She leaned forward, hands folded, eyes sincere. And let me be perfectly clear, we have reason to believe the individual behind this hoax is a disgruntled former employee. We are cooperating with authorities to investigate the source. Maria cursed under her breath. She's pointing right at you. The phone started buzzing nonstop. Unknown calls, voicemails from reporters, a message from Jack, they're coming after you hard. Stay put. Don't answer the door to anyone you do know. I couldn't sit still. My skin felt too tight, my lungs too small. We paced the apartment until Maria finally snapped. You wanted war, Chloe. This is war. Now you've got to fight like you mean it. David called that night. His voice was hoarse. Saw the coverage. She's cornered, but she's dangerous when cornered. You need to dump more, don't give her time to spin it. What if it backfires? I asked. What if people think I'm just obsessed, throwing junk at her? They already think that, he said. So prove them wrong, drop the documents, the payments, make it undeniable. I didn't sleep. I sat in the glow of my laptop, scrolling through files, my heart thudding like a war drum. Every page felt like a bullet I could load into a chamber. By dawn, Ruth had already published a peace cross, referencing the tape with known financial records. Podcasters were calling Elinor the Queen of Spin. A street artist painted her face on a brick wall with the word liar under it. The city was tipping. And then the counterattack landed. The Tribune ran a front-page story, former reporter caught in elaborate hoax. My picture splashed across the paper like a mugshot. They painted me as unstable, desperate for attention, fabricating evidence. The article quoted sources close to the newsroom who described me as erratic, vindictive. I sat on the floor, the paper trembling in my hands. They're rewriting me, I whispered. They're turning me into the villain. Maria ripped the paper in half. Then we write louder. We flood them with the truth until they can't drown it out. But the smear campaign didn't stop. Online trolls swarmed my social media with death threats. Someone spray-painted traitor on the front of my building. A car followed me for 6 blocks one night before peeling away. I called Jack, panicked. They're closing in on me. What do I do? His voice was weary but steady. You keep going. The more they push back, the closer you are to something real. But Chloe, watch your back. Elinor plays for keeps. The breaking point came when Maria's windows were smashed. We came back from the store to find her living room in shards, glass glittering across the floor like diamonds. A brick lay on the rug with a note taped to it. Stop or you'll be next. Maria picked it up with shaking hands. They're coming for me now too. I swallowed the bile in my throat. Then we hit them harder. That night we drafted the next release. Bank records, shell company transfers, emails directly connecting Elinor to lobbyists. We bundled them in a zip file and sent them to Ruth and her allies. Within 24 hours, it was everywhere. Digital paper headlines screamed about corruption. Commentators debated whether Elinor could survive the scandal. Protesters gathered outside Tribune headquarters, holding cardboard signs. The city was alive, electric, furious, and Elinor. She smiled through it all like the chaos only made her stronger. She gave interviews about fake news and foreign interference, twisting the story until half the audience doubted their own ears. I sat in the dark, watching her face on TV, my chest aching. "How do you beat someone who never breaks?" I asked aloud. David answered quietly over the line. "By showing the world what breaking looks like. Everyone has a limit, Chloe, find hers." I stared at the pile of documents on the table, the mountain of truth we hadn't yet unleashed. The fuse was burning. The only question was whether it would blow her sky high or take me with it. Chicago felt like it was vibrating under my feet. By the third day after the financial documents hit, protests had flooded downtown. Young kids in hoodies, older activists waving weathered signs, union workers banging on makeshift drums. They shouted Aliner's name like a curse, like she was the embodiment of everything rotten about the system. Maria and I wove through the crowd with our cameras. People stopped me, shoving phones in my face. "Are you Chloe, the one who leaked the tape?" Some thanked me. Some warned me to watch my back. One man spat near my feet and called me a liar. The city was splitting right down the middle. We ducked into an alley to catch our breath. Maria lit a cigarette with shaky hands. "You feel that?" she asked. "It's not just about Aliner anymore. It's about trust. It's about who owns the truth." I nodded, my chest tight. She was right, and that terrified me. That night Jack called. His voice was grave. "The governor is asking questions. He doesn't want to be tied to this. Aliner has been too valuable to too many people for too long. If she falls, others fall with her. You've rattled a cage bigger than you realize." "Then help me," I said. "If they're panicking, now's the time to push." But Jack hesitated. "Chloe, I have a family. I can't risk being crushed between you and Aliner, not anymore." The line went dead before I could respond. I sat in the dark living room, staring at the silence. Even Jack was breaking away. Maria touched my shoulder. "He's scared, everyone's scared, but we don't stop now." David called an hour later, his voice low and urgent. "They tried to get to me too. A car outside my place for 2 nights straight. I think they're watching everyone connected to you." "You have to make a choice, Chloe. Do you want to survive this or do you want to end her?" "Both," I whispered. "That's not on the table," he said. The next morning the smear machine turned the dial up to 11. Billboards flashed with Aliner's smiling face next to the words "defending truth." A radio ad accused me of being paid by foreign actors. Anonymous accounts flooded every corner of the internet with fake stories about me, affairs, drug abuse, a history of fraud that didn't exist. Maria shoved her phone at me, disgusted. "They're rewriting you faster than you can breathe." "I can't fight every lie," I said. "Then don't. Drop the hammer. Show them everything at once. Overload the system so they can't spin fast enough." We loaded up the last trove of files. Emails, contracts, donation receipts. Evidence of Aliner meeting lobbyists in secret, cash flowing through shell accounts, directives to shape coverage in exchange for favors. It was the motherlode. But before we could release it, Ruth called, her voice cracked with exhaustion. "Chloe, my site got hacked. They wiped half my archives. I can't publish right now. I don't even know if I'm safe." My throat went dry. "Then we go around them, straight to the people." Maria shook her head. "That's suicide. You upload this without allies, they'll bury you alive." I pressed my palms into my eyes. Every move felt like a trap. Aliner was everywhere and nowhere at once. Then the protests turned violent. Someone smashed Tribune windows. Police fired tear gas. Videos spread of officers swinging batons at unarmed kids. And still, Aliner smiled on TV, insisting this chaos proved the city needed her steady hand. David's voice echoed in my ear. "Everyone has a limit. Find hers." So I dug deeper, not in the files inside her. I rewatched every interview, every speech. I studied her cadence, her body language, looking for cracks, looking for a human heartbeat under the armor. Maria caught me at 3 a.m, hunched over the screen. "You're losing it, Chloe." "No," I muttered, "I'm finding it." Because there it was, a twitch when reporters asked about her past, a flicker in her eyes when she was cornered about money. She wasn't unbreakable. She just hadn't been hit in the right place. By dawn, I knew what to do. We set up a live stream. Just me, raw and unfiltered, camera shaking on a tripod in my apartment. I spoke straight into the lens, my voice cracking, my hands trembling. "I'm Chloe Miller. They've called me a liar, a traitor, a fraud, but here's the truth. Aliner Price has been taking money from powerful interests to poison what you read, what you hear, what you believe. I have the documents, I have the receipts, and I'm giving them to you, all of you right now." I dragged the file into the public link. Hit upload, hit share. Maria whispered, "God help us." The flood began instantly. Comments pouring in. Thousands of downloads in minutes. Screenshots flying across Twitter. bloggers dissecting the evidence live, and then the apartment lights went out. Maria screamed. I grabbed my phone for the flashlight. The building was dead silent, too silent. A knock at the door, slow, deliberate. Chloe Miller, a voice called, male, cold. We need to talk. Maria's nails dug into my arm. Don't open it. My heart pounded so loud I couldn't hear myself think. The knock came again, harder this time. But then from the alley below, sirens. Red and blue lights splashed through the blinds. The knock stopped. Footsteps retreated down the hall. We waited in silence, every second stretching like a lifetime. Finally, Maria whispered, "You just declared war, and they're coming for you." I swallowed hard. Then let them come, because now the whole world is watching. The morning after the live stream, the city didn't feel like the same place. Every screen glowed with screenshots of the files. Talk radio hosts were practically screaming at each other about whether Alina should resign. Twitter was a war zone. Strangers DM'd me thank yous, confessions, death threats, marriage proposals. Maria scrolled through her feed wide-eyed. It's everywhere. They can't put this genie back in the bottle. I wanted to believe her. But then my phone rang. An unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. The transcript came through almost immediately. Miss Miller, this is Special Agent Donahue with the FBI. We'd like to ask you a few questions regarding the material you uploaded last night. Please call us back at your earliest convenience. Maria cursed. They're flipping the narrative, turning you into the criminal. I buried my face in my hands. I had expected Alina to smear me to scare me, but federal involvement? That was a new beast. Jack finally called back after days of silence. His voice was raw, like he hadn't slept. Chloe, they're opening a federal investigation. They're saying you released classified material. That's impossible. These were Tribune files, not government secrets. Doesn't matter, Jack said. If they say it's classified, then it's classified. You need legal counsel yesterday. I laughed bitterly. With what money, Jack? Exposure doesn't pay the bills, he sighed. I'll see what I can do. But Chloe, this is going nuclear. Alina's donors are pulling strings at the highest levels. You scared the wrong people. I looked at Maria. She had that stubborn set in her jaw. Then we scare them back, she said. But that night, the first casualty came. Ruth called, her voice trembling. My office was raided. They said they were looking for evidence of hacking. Chloe, they took my hard drives, everything. My stomach dropped. Oh my God, Ruth, are you safe? I don't know, I'm staying with a friend, but they're making me out to be your accomplice. After the call ended, Maria slammed her fist on the counter. This is how they break people. They don't just come for you, they come for everyone around you until you're alone. The words echoed in my head long after she went to bed. Alone. The next day, protesters surrounded Tribune headquarters again, this time louder, angrier. I went down there with my camera, trying to feel useful, to feel like I still had control. A young man recognized me and shouted my name. The crowd surged, pulling me in, lifting me on their shoulders like some kind of folk hero. I should have felt powerful. Instead, I felt like a fraud, like they didn't know how close I was to breaking. Then, over the chant of my name, I saw Alina step out of a black car. Calm, smiling, flanked by security. She waved at the protesters as if they were fans at a parade. I locked eyes with her across the chaos. For just a second, her smile faltered. But then she leaned into a microphone and said, "These people are being manipulated by lies, and I will not stop fighting for the truth." The crowd roared with rage. Bottles flew. Security hustled her inside. Maria grabbed my arm. "You got to her, did you see?" For once she blinked. But I wasn't sure, because even blinking, Alina looked like she was still in control. That night David called, voice low. "There's more, Chloe, files I never showed you. Stuff I held back because I didn't think anyone would be brave enough to use it. But you've already crossed the line. Meet me tomorrow, same diner." I felt a spark of hope. Proof that Alina couldn't bury. Proof that even the FBI couldn't twist. But Maria wasn't so sure. What if it's a trap? I shook my head. David's scared, but he's not a liar. If he says he has something, he has it. The next day, I walked into the diner with my camera bag slung over my shoulder. David sat in the corner booth, pale, jittery, a man carrying too much. He slid a thick envelope across the table. "This is it," he whispered. "Direct orders from Alina to alter stories. Payment confirmations from the organization she's working for. Names of the politicians who covered for her. It's the smoking gun." I touched the envelope with shaking fingers. "Why now?" He looked me dead in the eyes. "Because you've already made me a target. At least this way, if they come for me, the truth will be out." I swallowed the guilt and tucked the envelope into my bag. That night, Maria and I spread the documents across the floor. The evidence was overwhelming. Alina wasn't just manipulating stories. She was laundering influence, shaping elections, trading truth for power. Maria looked at me, her eyes blazing. This isn't just about saving your name anymore. This is about saving the city. And then the lights in the apartment flickered, went out. I froze. Maria grabbed a flashlight. We heard footsteps in the hall, moving closer. I whispered, "Not again, not tonight." The steps stopped right outside our door. Silence stretched. Then a slip of paper slid under the door. We both stared at it like it was a snake. I bent down and picked it up. 4 words, written in black ink: "You've gone too far." The note sat on the kitchen counter all night, taunting me in the glow of Maria's flashlight. 4 little words: "You've gone too far." It didn't matter who slipped it under the door. It could have been a neighbor. It could have been Alina herself. Either way, it was a promise. By morning, I'd made my decision. We weren't going to hold back anymore. The envelope David gave me was too powerful, too dangerous to sit on. If we hesitated, Alina would find a way to bury it, just like she had buried everything else. Maria sat cross-legged on the floor, sipping coffee like it was medicine. "Once we hit upload, there's no undoing this. You know that, right?" "I know," I said, "but this isn't about me anymore." We scanned the files, redacted nothing, and built a public folder that anyone could access. I typed a single sentence above the link: "Here, what they never wanted you to see." And then I hit publish. The effect was immediate, like lighting a match in a room full of gasoline. Screenshots tore across Twitter. Anonymous accounts dove into the documents like sharks in bloody water. By lunchtime, 3 local stations had interrupted regular programming to discuss the leaks. One anchor held up a page of payment confirmations with Alina's name circled in red. "If these documents are real," he said, "we're looking at one of the most explosive political scandals in Chicago's history." Maria whooped and grabbed my shoulders. "You did it, Chloe. You finally cracked her open." But relief didn't last long. Within hours, the Tribune ran a special edition front page: "Miller documents are forgeries." They claimed handwriting experts had debunked signatures, financial experts had flagged inconsistencies. They quoted independent analysts who called the leaks laughable. Maria slammed the paper down. "They didn't even investigate, they're just parroting Alina's line." I rubbed my temples, my head pounding. "Of course they are, she owns them." But then Ruth called, her voice was electric. "Forget the Tribune. National outlets are picking it up. CNN, NBC, even the Times. They can't ignore it anymore." For the first time in days, I felt a sliver of hope. That night, I watched Alina on live television. Her face was tighter than usual, her eyes sharper. "These so-called documents," she said, "are nothing but fabrications designed to smear me and undermine the stability of our city. The individuals responsible will be held accountable. Mark my words." I leaned closer to the screen. She wasn't smiling, not really. And for the first time, she looked cornered. Maria whispered, "She's slipping. You see it?" I saw it. But I also saw the danger in her eyes, a predator about to lash out. 2 nights later, it happened. David didn't show up for our scheduled meeting. He never missed. I called his phone until it went to voicemail. Then Maria and I drove to his apartment. The door was ajar. Inside, the place was ransacked. Papers shredded, hard drives smashed, and David gone. Maria's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh God, Chloe, what if they took him?" I picked up a piece of paper from the floor. Half-burned, edges curling. It looked like one of the documents he'd shown me, but most of it was unreadable. My hands shook. "They did take him," I whispered. "They're cleaning house." Back at the apartment, we triple-locked the doors and sat in silence. The city outside sounded louder, angrier, sirens blaring, helicopters circling. The protests had grown into riots, storefronts smashed, tear gas drifting like fog. Maria turned to me, her voice breaking. "How far are you willing to go, Chloe?" "Because they're not going to stop, not until you're destroyed." I looked at her, exhausted, terrified, furious. "Then let them come. If I fall telling the truth." She stared at me, eyes wet. "And if I fall with you?" The silence between us was heavier than any threat. The next morning, the FBI showed up at my door. 2 agents in black suits, badges flashing. "Miss Miller, we need you to come with us." Maria stepped in front of me, her fists clenched. "She's not going anywhere without a lawyer." But the agents didn't care. They pushed past her and cuffed my wrists. As they marched me down the hall, I caught sight of my neighbors peeking through their doors, whispering. To them, I was already guilty. At the field office, they shoved me into a sterile room and grilled me for hours. Where did I get the documents? Who was helping me? Was I working with foreign governments? I kept repeating the same words. "I'm a journalist. I publish the truth." They didn't care. After 12 hours, they released me without charges. No explanation, no apology, just a warning. "Stay out of trouble, Miss Miller, for your own sake." When I stumbled back into the apartment, Maria hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "I thought they were going to disappear you like David." I closed my eyes, the weight of it all pressing down. Maybe they still will. But the files were out there. The story was alive. And Alina was bleeding. For the first time, I dared to believe she could actually fall. By the time the sun came up, I was Chloe Miller, the freelance photographer anymore. I was Chloe Miller, the headline. Every channel, every site, every scroll through a newsfeed carried my face beside words like whistleblower, traitor, hero. It depended on who you asked. Maria sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, hair a wild halo from another sleepless night. "It's gone national," she said. New York Times is running an editorial calling for Alina's resignation. Fox is saying you're part of some liberal deep state plot. Half the country hates you, half wants to put you on a postage stamp. I sank into the chair across from her. I didn't want this, I just wanted the truth out. She gave me a look that was equal parts pity and pride. You don't get to choose how the truth spreads. Once it's out, it has a life of its own. The phone rang before I could answer. Unknown number again. I almost let it go, but Maria nodded. Pick up could be important, I answered cautiously. Hello, a male voice, raspy, urgent. Chloe, my name's Alan Cho. I used to work under Alina. I can't stay quiet anymore. She's dangerous. She's been doing this for years and not just here. If you want proof, meet me tonight. Old Train Yard on Halsted, 11 o'clock. I sat frozen, phone pressed to my ear. Why me? Because you're the only one reckless enough to fight her. Then the line went dead. Maria leaned forward. Who was that? I explained, and her face tightened. Could be legit, could be a setup. Either way, I said, I have to go. That evening, the streets outside looked like a war zone. Protesters clashed with police in front of the Tribune building. Tear gas turned the air white. Helicopters thudded overhead. Every corner of Chicago was crackling like a live wire. Maria begged me not to leave. What if it's a trap? What if they disappear you like David? I touched her cheek, brushing away a stray tear. If it's a trap, I'll fight my way out, but if it's real, if there's more proof, I can't ignore it, she whispered. Then I'm coming with you. We made it to the train yard just before 11. The place smelled of rust and rain, shadows stretching like claws. Alan stepped out from behind a boxcar, his hands raised. He looked haunted, eyes darting like a cornered animal. You came, he said, voice trembling. Because you asked, I replied. What do you have? He handed me a flash drive. Internal memos, audio recordings, Alina ordering us to spin stories, proof of payments from her donors, names of the politicians she protected, enough to bury her 100 times over. I gripped the drive like it was a holy relic. Why now? Alan's jaw tightened. Because David's gone, and I'm next if I don't run. Get this out before they find me. Suddenly headlights blazed across the yard. A black SUV roared toward us. Alan shoved me back. Go. Take it and go. The SUV door flew open. Men in black masks spilled out. Maria grabbed my hand and yanked me into the shadows. Alan wasn't so lucky. They caught him, dragged him kicking and screaming into the vehicle. Alan, I shouted. But then Maria pulled me harder, the flash drive burning in my pocket. The SUV screeched away, Alan's screams swallowed by the night. Back at the apartment, I collapsed onto the floor, shaking. They took him, just like David. Maria crouched beside me, voice hard. Then we make sure his sacrifice means something. We use what he gave us. We plugged in the flash drive, and sure enough, it was gold. Recordings of Alina's voice, clear as day, ordering edits, mocking the public, laughing about how easy it was to manipulate narratives. Documents linking her directly to political kingmakers, donors funneling money into shadow campaigns. Maria whispered, "This is it. This is the kill shot." But before we could release it, the power cut out. Again, I cursed, fumbling for my phone. Its glow lit Maria's terrified face. Then my screen flashed with a new message from an unknown number. Last warning. Stop or the next body we take will be yours. I sat frozen, phone trembling in my hand. Maria grabbed it, eyes blazing. Then we don't stop. We hit them harder. We hit them so hard they can't recover. I wanted to believe her. But for the first time, I wasn't sure if we'd live to see the end of this story. The next morning, news broke that a Tribune executive had resigned suddenly, then another. Then a junior editor came forward on record saying Alina pressured her to alter coverage. The cracks were spreading inside her empire. Ruth called, breathless. Chloe, it's happening. They're turning on her. People are scared to go down with the ship. I pressed the flash drive tighter in my palm. Then let's sink it for good. By dawn, the city felt like it was holding its breath. The streets were eerily quiet after a night of sirens and shattered windows. Maria and I sat at the table with Ruth and Jack, the flash drive between us like it was radioactive. None of us spoke for a while, just the steady drip of the coffee pot and the faint hum of helicopters in the distance. Finally, Jack broke the silence. We dropped this and Aliner's finished. But we're finished too. You know that, right? I stared at him. You saying we hold back? After Alan, after David? His jaw clenched. I'm saying once this goes out, there's no going back. They'll burn every one of us. Maria slammed her hand on the table. Then let them try. I'm sick of running, sick of hiding. Chloe, you've been fighting for truth since the day I met you. Don't stop now. I closed my eyes. Alan's voice echoed in my head, get this out before they find me. When I opened them again, I knew what had to be done. We release it, today. Ruth cracked her knuckles, already reaching for her laptop. I'll set it up on independent lens. Once it's live, there's no pulling it down. Mirror sites, backups, it'll spread faster than they can scrub it. We spent the next 6 hours combing through the files. There was no fluff, no exaggeration, just cold, ugly truth. Aliner's voice caught on tape. Spin it however you want. Just make sure the blame sticks. Fear sells. Fear keeps them coming back. She laughed at us. Laughed at everyone who trusted her paper. By late afternoon, the upload was ready. Maria hovered over my shoulder, her hand on my back. Jack paced like a caged lion. Ruth clicked once and the progress bar lit up. Green, complete. It's live, she whispered. For a heartbeat, the world was still. Then my phone began vibrating nonstop. Notifications poured in. Journalists, activists, bloggers, politicians, everyone scrambling to share, to comment, to rage. On Twitter, Aliner's name trended at #1. #Lens of Truth exploded. Thousands of people retweeting clips of her voice, screenshots of memos, photos of signed checks from political donors. Cable news erupted. Anchors with furrowed brows tried to sound measured but couldn't hide the tremor in their voices. One host leaned forward, tapping the desk. If these documents are authentic, and early indications suggest they are, then Aliner Vance has not only manipulated public trust but possibly violated federal law. Jack stopped pacing, his face pale. We just lit the fuse. That night the protests doubled. Crowds outside the Tribune Tower waved signs with my name, with Alan's name, with David's. They weren't just chanting for answers anymore. They were chanting for Aliner's head. But even as her empire cracked, the danger pressed closer. Around midnight, Maria shook me awake. Chloe, someone's outside. I grabbed my camera out of instinct, peered through the blinds. A black car idled across the street. Engine running. No plates, Jack swore under his breath. They're watching us now. We killed the lights, huddled in the dark. My phone buzzed with a new text. No number, just 4 words, you should have stayed quiet. Ruth whispered, we need to move. Now. By dawn we were packed. Bags, gear, hard drives. Maria clutched the camera bag to her chest like a lifeline. We slipped out the back, weaving through alleys. Jack led us to an abandoned print shop downtown, a place he'd used before as a safe house. The place smelled of dust and ink. Old presses stood like rusted giants. Ruth set up a hotspot. Jack checked the locks. Maria wrapped her arms around me. They're scared, Chloe. That's why they're watching us. That means we're winning. I wanted to believe her, but sleep wouldn't come. Every creak of the building made my chest tight. The next day brought chaos on every channel. Aliner appeared on live TV, her hair immaculate, her smile sharp as glass. These so-called recordings, she said smoothly, are fabricated. They are part of a coordinated attack against me, against the free press, and against democracy itself. I threw a pillow at the screen. Liar. But then the anchor pushed back. Ms. Vance, several of your former employees have already corroborated these claims. And last night, Congressman Doyle announced a formal inquiry. For the first time, Aliner's smile flickered, just a crack, but I saw it. The wolves were circling. That evening, Ruth got a secure message from a contact in Washington. They want to meet you, Chloe, confidential hearing, testimony. My heart pounded. If I go, I'm not coming back. Maria's hand found mine. Then I'm going with you. But Jack shook his head. Too dangerous. They'll try to make you vanish before you even get to D.C. I thought of Alan, of the SUV swallowing him whole, of David's silence. I'm not running anymore, I said. If this is the fight, then I'm in it all the way. The morning we left Chicago, the city looked like a scar. Storefronts boarded, sirens echoing, smoke drifting from the protests that had stretched into their 3rd week. I had my backpack, my camera, the hard drives with Alan's evidence. Maria had her laptop and an iron will. Jack drove, jaw locked, eyes scanning every mirror like he was expecting bullets. Ruth stayed behind to keep independent lens running. Somebody's got to keep feeding the fire, she said. She hugged me so tight it hurt. You come back in one piece, Chloe. Don't you let them take you too. The car hummed onto the interstate and Chicago shrank in the rearview. I should have felt lighter. Instead, I felt hunted. Hours blurred. Maria dozed against my shoulder while Jack gripped the wheel. Every time a black SUV passed, I flinched. At one point, a dark sedan tailed us for 20 miles. Jack finally pulled off into a gas station and waited. When the sedan didn't follow, he muttered, "We're not paranoid, we're prey." By dusk, we crossed into Indiana. That's when it happened. A truck swerved into our lane out of nowhere. Jack cursed, wrenching the wheel. Metal screamed. We barely missed slamming into the guardrail. The truck kept coming, ramming us once, twice. Maria screamed. I dug my nails into the seat. Jack floored it, engine howling. For a minute it was all chaos, horns, headlights, the roar of tires. Then suddenly the truck veered off, disappearing into the night like it had never existed. Silence filled the car except for our ragged breathing. "That wasn't random," Jack said finally. I couldn't stop shaking. "They tried to kill us." Maria gripped my hand so hard it hurt. "Then we hit harder. They're desperate. That means we're close." We pushed on until dawn. Finally pulled into a motel in Ohio, bodies and nerves shredded. The room smelled of stale smoke and bleach. I collapsed on the bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Maria lay beside me, whispering, "You don't have to do this alone. Whatever happens in DC, I'm with you." Her words steadied me like a handrail in a storm. The next day, news exploded again. Eliner's deputy editor, her right hand for 15 years, resigned publicly, citing irreconcilable differences. Within hours, he released a statement hinting at systemic corruption under Eliner's leadership. Jack read it aloud in disbelief. "Her own people are bailing. She's bleeding out." Maria leaned closer to the screen. "Not fast enough. She still has friends in high places. We can't underestimate that." By the time we reached the outskirts of DC, the paranoia had hardened into armor. Every car behind us looked suspicious. Every pedestrian might have had a gun. Jack arranged for us to meet a contact, an old friend of David's, who knew safe houses in the city. The safe house turned out to be a cramped apartment above a laundromat. The hum of dryers below was constant, almost soothing. Inside, peeling wallpaper and flickering lights reminded me of every cheap crash pad I'd ever used chasing stories. But for now, it was sanctuary. That night I sat with Maria, scrolling through the avalanche of news. Congress had announced an official hearing into Eliner's conduct. Hashtags calling for her arrest filled every platform, but she wasn't silent. She went on national TV again, her eyes burning with defiance. "This is a witch hunt," she spat. "I have dedicated my life to journalism, and now a group of radicals and liars are trying to destroy me with doctored evidence. I will not bend. I will not break." Maria hurled a pillow at the screen. "She's gaslighting the entire country." But I watched closely. Eliner's tone was sharp, but her eyes told another story. Fear, just a flicker, but it was there. 2 days later, I was scheduled to testify. Closed hearing, confidential. Jack drove me to the secure building, his knuckles white on the wheel. Maria held my hand the whole way. As we approached the entrance, protesters lined the sidewalks, some waving signs with my name, others screaming slurs. Cameras flashed. Microphones thrust. I kept my head down, heart pounding. Inside, the halls were sterile, cold. A staffer led me into a chamber with dark wood paneling and a semicircle of officials. I sat, palms sweating, and swore to tell the truth. For hours I laid it all out. The bus crash photos, the edits, Eliner's threats, David's exile, Alan's flash drive. Every word burned my throat, but I forced it out. At one point, a senator leaned forward, his voice low. "Ms. Miller, you understand that by testifying here, you are placing yourself in grave danger." I met his gaze. The danger started the moment I picked up my camera. "I'm not here to be safe, I'm here to be honest." When it ended, I stumbled out into the blinding sunlight. Maria and Jack were waiting. Maria threw her arms around me. Jack's smile was weary but proud. "You did it," he said. But as we walked back toward the car, I noticed a man leaning against a lamppost, watching us. He didn't hold a sign. He didn't chant. He just stared. And when our eyes met, he touched his ear, murmured something, and melted into the crowd. The chill in my spine told me Eliner wasn't done. Not yet. That night, the safe house phone rang. Jack answered, his face draining of color. He handed me the receiver. A familiar voice oozed through the line. "Eliner. You think this is over, Chloe? You think your little crusade will save you? Hear me. You will regret the day you ever pointed a camera at me." Her laughter was sharp, metallic, before the line went dead. I stood frozen, phone trembling in my hand. Maria whispered, "What did she say?" I swallowed hard. "That she's coming for me." The morning after Eliner's phone call, the smear campaign began like a floodgate bursting open. Every major outlet that still stood by her ran the same headline in some variation. "Photographer fabricates evidence in political smear." My picture, hair wild, eyes red from exhaustion, splashed across front pages and websites. Beneath it, words cut sharp as knives: unstable, attention-seeking, unreliable. Maria hurled her coffee mug at the wall. They're trying to crucify you. Look at this, claiming you doctored your own photos to frame Alina, saying Alan and David never existed. They're erasing them, I whispered. Just like Alina erased my pictures, just like she's erased everyone who stood in her way. Jack scrolled furiously on his phone. They've planted stories about your past too, arrest records that don't exist. Claims you plagiarized work at the Tribune, even hinting at a drug habit. They're throwing the kitchen sink. My stomach twisted. And people will believe it, they always believe the loudest voice. Maria grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to meet her eyes. Then we have to be louder. Truth doesn't whisper, Chloe, truth roars. But the doubt had already wormed into my chest. Every notification on my phone was another stranger calling me a liar, a fraud, a traitor. My name was now a weapon used against me. That night we stayed silent, curtains drawn tight in the laundromat safe house. Jack paced until his boots wore lines in the linoleum. Maria sat curled beside me, her hand in mine, her laptop glowing with endless streams of vitriol. Then, finally, a spark. News broke that federal investigators had subpoenaed Tribune financial records, and not just Alina's department, entire divisions of the paper. Donations, payoffs, consulting fees. It was the first concrete sign that the government wasn't just listening. They were moving. Jack exhaled hard. This is it, they're finally feeling heat. Maria's eyes gleamed. But they'll fight harder now, cornered animals always do. And she was right. 2 days later, a video surfaced online. Grainy footage, supposedly me in a motel room counting stacks of cash. The caption screamed, "Whistleblower caught taking bribes." I felt my throat close as I watched. The figure looked enough like me to fool anyone not paying attention. Same hair, same build, but the hands too big, too stiff. Maria slammed the laptop shut. It's fake, obviously fake. Jack rubbed his temples. Doesn't matter. Fake sticks just as good as real, maybe better. The air grew heavier with every passing day. We moved safe houses twice, paranoia gnawing at us. Every footstep in the hallway, every click of a lock sounded like the start of the end. But amid the noise, cracks widened in Alina's shield. Her longtime accountant flipped, handing over documents showing millions funneled from shadowy donors into Tribune projects she oversaw. Late-night comedians turned her into a punchline. Senators who once smiled beside her now publicly distanced themselves. One evening, as we huddled in yet another safe house, Ruth's face popped up on a secure call. She looked haggard but electric. Chloe, it's happening. The walls are collapsing. She's not untouchable anymore. My chest tightened. Then why do I feel like I'm drowning? Because even as Alina faltered, the threats grew sharper. Another text came through that night, chilling in its simplicity. Tick, tock. Maria threw her phone down, trembling with fury. We can't keep waiting for them to come for us. We have to push. Harder, louder now, Jack nodded grimly. We go back on offense. We've been running too long. I wanted to believe we could still turn the tide. But the weight of their lies pressed heavy, a storm cloud that refused to break. The next morning, though, I got the call I didn't expect. Ms. Miller, the voice was clipped, official. This is Assistant U.S. Attorney Karen Lattimore. I'd like to meet with you. Privately, I believe we have common ground. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The government wasn't just circling Alina anymore. They were reaching out to me. Maria squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. Jack's eyes narrowed, suspicious. But inside me, a spark lit. Maybe, just maybe, the tide was finally turning. I met Assistant U.S. Attorney Karen Lattimore in a nondescript government building that looked more like a DMV than the front line of a political scandal. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The waiting room smelled of paper and disinfectant. Jack insisted on sitting outside, arms folded, while Maria stayed glued to my side until security stopped her at the door. Karen was tall, sharp-featured, hair pulled back into a bun that didn't allow for softness. She shook my hand firmly, eyes searching mine like she was weighing every secret I'd ever carried. Ms. Miller, she said, gesturing to a chair across from her. Thank you for coming. I know the risks you've taken. I want to make something clear. I'm not here to protect Alina Vance. I'm here to protect the law. Her voice was steady, unflinching. It unnerved me more than Alina's threats. I slid the flash drive across the table. Alan Cho gave me this before they took him. Everything you need is on there. Audio, documents, payments, it's enough to bury her. Karen didn't even glance at it. We've already subpoenaed similar material. But corroboration matters. Your testimony matters. What I need to know is whether you're willing to take the stand in open court. The question hung heavy in the air. I thought of Alan, of David, of the black SUVs, and the truck on the highway. I thought of Maria's trembling hand in mine. Yes, I said finally. I'll testify, no matter what it costs. Corinne's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes, respect maybe. Good, because the cost will be high. When I left the building, Maria rushed to me. What did she say? That it's going to get worse before it gets better. Jack muttered, figures. That night, Aliner's world cracked again. A leaked recording of a phone call between her and a prominent senator hit the airwaves. Her voice, dripping with disdain, mocking voters, laughing about how easy it was to steer the sheep. The senator denied it at first, then resigned within hours. Maria watched the chaos unfold on her laptop, eyes blazing. She's losing everyone, piece by piece. But Aliner wasn't going quietly. 2 days later, a primetime documentary aired on one of her allied networks. It painted me as a manipulative opportunist, a fame-hungry fraud who had smeared a respected journalist for clicks. They even interviewed a woman claiming to be an old classmate of mine, swearing I'd been obsessed with taking people down. I didn't even recognize her. I slammed the laptop shut, bile rising in my throat. She's inventing ghosts now. Maria wrapped her arms around me. Let her. Every lie she tells is another rope tightening around her own neck. Jack wasn't so sure. Not if people buy it. And a lot will. Days blurred into nights in the safe house. The walls seemed to close in tighter with each passing hour. I barely slept, my dreams haunted by Alan's screams, by David's silence, by Aliner's laughter echoing in my ear. Then suddenly the first real crack of light. Corinne called again. We've filed charges. Wire fraud, conspiracy, evidence tampering. Aliner Vance is being indicted. The words hit me like a thunderclap. Indicted. For the first time, Aliner wasn't just untouchable power. She was a criminal defendant. Maria cried, actually cried, tears of relief running down her face. Jack let out a long, low whistle. Hell just froze over. But the celebration didn't last. That same night, our safe house door rattled violently, someone trying the locks. Maria grabbed my hand, eyes wide with terror. Jack was already at the window, gun drawn. The rattling stopped. Silence. Then footsteps fading into the night. No one slept after that. By morning, I made my decision. I turned to Maria and Jack. I'm done hiding. If Aliner going to burn, I want to watch it happen. I'm going to court. Maria gripped my face in her hands. Then we go together, Jack just nodded. You're both insane, but so am I, let's finish this. The courthouse loomed like a fortress of glass and stone, its steps swarmed by cameras and crowds. Protesters waved signs on both sides. Justice for truth clashed with stand with Aliner. Every step I climbed felt like dragging a weight through quicksand. Maria squeezed my hand. Jack flanked us, his jaw clenched, eyes scanning the swarm like he expected bullets. Inside, the air was cold, heavy with whispers. Reporters filled the gallery, pens scratching like claws. Federal agents stood like statues along the walls. At the center sat Aliner. She looked smaller than I remembered, but no less dangerous. Her tailored suit was flawless, her hair gleamed under the lights, but her eyes, those sharp, merciless eyes, locked on me the second I entered. She smiled. I sat at the witness stand, palms slick with sweat, heart pounding. The oath tasted like iron on my tongue. And then the prosecutor's voice guided me forward. Ms. Miller, can you tell us what you witnessed the day of the bus crash? I told them everything. The smoke, the screams, the camera shaking in my hands as I captured the truth. How Aliner ordered those images twisted. How the story became a weapon against the innocent. How she threatened me when I refused to be silent. Every word felt like peeling skin from bone, but I forced it out. Aliner's attorney sneered. Ms. Miller, isn't it true you are a freelance photographer desperate for recognition? Isn't it possible you manufactured this story for personal gain? I met his gaze and didn't blink. I didn't manufacture anything. I lived it, I bled for it, and I lost friends because of it. That's the truth. The gallery rustled. Cameras flashed. When I stepped down, Aliner leaned close enough for me to hear her whisper. You'll regret this. Her breath was cold as ice. That night, back at the safe house, we barely spoke. Maria curled against me, trembling. Jack sat by the window, gun within reach. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages, threats, support, chaos. The world outside spun like a storm I couldn't control. Then came the explosion. Literally. Around midnight, the laundromat below us erupted in flames. The building shuddered, glass shattered, smoke poured through the vents. Maria screamed. Jack bellowed for us to move. We stumbled through choking blackness, down the fire escape as sirens wailed in the distance. Heat seared my skin, ash stung my eyes. By the time we hit the alley, the entire building was a torch. Our safe house gone, our refuge turned to cinders. Maria coughed, clutching my arm. They're trying to kill us, again. Jack's face was a grim mask. And next time they won't miss. We found shelter in an abandoned church on the edge of town. Its stained glass windows were cracked, pews warped, but it was shelter. As I lay on the cold floor, Maria's head on my chest, one thought looped in my mind. If Alina was willing to burn buildings, what would stop her from burning people? The trial raged on. Witnesses paraded in, former employees, donors, politicians who'd once smiled beside Alina. Each chipped another piece off her armor. But she fought back. Every night she gave interviews from the courthouse steps, her voice sharp as ever. They want to silence me because I speak truth to power. They want to destroy me because I cannot be controlled. Chloe Miller is a fraud, a manipulator, a danger to democracy. Crowds cheered, others jeered. The country split down the middle. Maria showed me clips of pundits arguing about me like I wasn't human, just a symbol to be dissected. I wanted to scream, but the words stuck in my throat. Then one morning, Ruth burst through the church doors, breathless. "Alan," I sat bolt upright. "What about him?" "They found him, alive." My knees nearly buckled. He was in protective custody, too broken to appear in court yet, but his testimony had been recorded. The jury would hear it. His voice, his evidence, his survival, it was the crack of thunder we'd prayed for. For the first time in weeks, hope surged through me. But hope, I'd learned, always came with a price. That night, as we returned to the church, the man from the lamppost was waiting in the shadows, the one who had touched his ear outside the courthouse. He stepped forward, hand in his jacket. Jack raised his gun. "Back off." The man smirked. "This isn't over. Alina doesn't fall. People like her never fall." And then he disappeared into the dark, leaving the threat to rot in my chest. The courthouse was silent that morning. The kind of silence that presses against your skin and seeps into your bones. I stood with Maria and Jack on either side. Ruth and Alan's recorded testimony waiting in the judge's chambers. Outside, thousands gathered. Inside, 12 strangers held the weight of justice in their hands. The jury filed in. No one spoke. No one moved. The foreman stood, paper trembling slightly. "We find the defendant, Alina Vance, guilty on all counts." The words cracked like thunder. For a second, I didn't breathe. Then the gallery erupted, cheers, gasps, the crash of cameras exploding in light. Alina didn't flinch. Her face remained a mask, jaw tight, eyes burning holes through me. The judge's gavel pounded. Order in the court. I watched as marshals moved to cuff her wrists. Even then, she smiled. "You think you've won," she hissed across the aisle. "You've only stirred the beast. There will always be another me, someone hungrier, smarter, colder." I stepped closer, my voice steady though my insides shook. "Maybe. But now everyone knows what you did. And every lens, every voice, every heart that believes in truth will be watching for the next you." For the first time, her smile faltered. The doors swung open. Reporters swarmed as Alina was led away in chains, shouting questions, snapping photos. She tried to hold her head high, but the weight of the verdict bent her shoulders. Outside, the crowd roared. Some cheered my name, others cursed it. But the tide had shifted. The truth was no longer buried. Alan appeared days later, gaunt but alive, his voice raw as he told his story to the independent platform. His courage lit a fire across the country. Donations poured in for investigative journalism. Whistleblowers came forward. The machine Alina had built cracked wide open. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt tired. So tired my bones ached. That night, Maria and I walked along the river. The city lights shimmered on the water, soft and forgiving. "You did it," she whispered, leaning her head against my shoulder. "No," I said quietly. "We did it, you, Jack, Ruth, Alan, everyone who refused to stay silent. I just happened to hold the camera." She smiled through her tears. "And you held it steady." Jack joined us, his hands shoved deep in his coat pockets. "You realize they'll come for you again, right? Maybe not Alina, but someone. There's always someone who hates the truth." I nodded. "I know, but that's the job, and I'm not running anymore." He gave me a rare smile. "Then I guess I'll stick around a little longer. Make sure you live long enough to piss off the next tyrant." We laughed, the sound rough but real. Weeks later, I stood before a crowd at Columbia College, invited to speak to young journalists. My palms sweated, my throat tightened, but I looked at those faces, bright, eager, afraid, and I told them everything. I told them about the smoke, the lies, the threats, about losing homes and friends and safety. About how easy it is to twist truth until it becomes poison. And then I told them why we fight. Because truth matters. Because every photo, every word, every act of courage is a shield against the dark. Because silence is a prison and stories set us free. I'm not here because I was brave. I'm here because I refused to stop. And so can you? The applause thundered. But it wasn't for me. It was for the idea that none of us stand alone. Afterward, a student shyly handed me a photograph she had taken of the river at night, lights rippling across the water. On the back, she had written, "Through your lens, I see hope." I held that picture for a long time. Life didn't suddenly get easy. There were still bills, still fear, still shadows that lingered. But I had Maria's laughter, Jack's gruff loyalty, Ruth's fire, Alan's resilience. And I had my camera, always my camera. When I lift it now, I don't just see images. I see responsibility. To tell it right, to keep it honest, to never let another Aliner decide what story the world hears. The truth is fragile, but through the lens, it can become unbreakable. And as long as I can hold a camera, I'll keep fighting for it, because the world deserves to see what's real. Because light, even in the darkest corners, will always find a way through.